Hey everyone, I hope that you are doing well. We are continuing our journey through 4th edition as though it were just released and is brand new, and have with all the excitement that goes along with that. We are currently digging into the player's handbook and kind of going through section by section. Today we're going to take a peek at some of the class details. I'm not yet going to dig into the classes themselves. That will come probably next. But at the beginning of the classes chapter in the player's handbook, there is a lot of really good information that we need to understand before we can dig into the classes, because we got to know this information in order to be able to interpret some of the stuff on those classes pages. So I want to take a look at that first, and then we will, in other videos, we will start digging into the classes themselves. So, and keep in mind that I'm making these videos with trying to cast a very wide net. I know that a lot of folks that are watching these, at least when they're first released, are likely people who are already fans of 4th edition. So this is kind of remedial, hopefully still informative. Other people may be curious about 4th edition, but you're coming from another edition of the game, and so some of it will be familiar to you. Probably a lot of it will be familiar to you, but there is some stuff that is specific to 4th edition. And then there's other folks who are brand new to Dungeons and Dragons, and they're just coming across these videos and wondering what 4th edition is. And I want to make sure that we're kind of covering all those bases with what we have here. So I might go into a little more detail than I might otherwise on things, because I want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. If you're watching these videos and you think there's stuff that I should or should not include, please, put those in the comments. I'll use those to help make the videos a little more streamlined and better as we go forward. So, but let's, for now, let's take a look at the introduction to classes and see what we've got there. So this is chapter 4 of the player's handbook, and the first couple pages that we have here, there's a lot of information to be had, and there's a lot of stuff in here that actually is starting to get very specific to 4th edition. There's things that would not be familiar to people who, even if you're coming from another edition of the game, that you would necessarily know what some of these are. Some of this stuff is familiar, but a lot of it is starting to get new, whereas in some of the stuff we've looked at so far, there's a lot of similarities between the prior editions of the game. But here we can see right off the bat that we've got, there are 8 different classes to choose from. We've got a cleric, a fighter, a paladin, a ranger, a rogue, a warlock, a warlord, and a wizard. And someone coming from any other edition of the game, if there's one that's going to jump out at you, it's probably going to be the warlord, because that one is pretty unique to 4th edition. There's maybe some other builds in other games that reference the warlord's traits, if you will. They do the same, serves the same function as a warlord, but it doesn't have the warlord name. So this one is definitely a 4th edition exclusive, if you will. It's another type of leader class that is used to provide some healing and move allies around the battlefield, things like that. So really nice class, and when we get into the class reviews, we'll see some of the things that it gets to do. But that is definitely one that would probably jump out at you. Moving on down the list, you'll see that it talks a little bit about some other details here, and this is the stuff that we'll see when we look at the classes themselves. We'll see some of these details in there, and it's kind of defining what those terms mean. The first one it talks about is the role, and that's like the first thing you're going to see with each of the classes. And I know that this is a big point of contention for people who like to bash 4th edition, is that they had these roles and that really limited your character, and you put them in a bucket and you tied their hands on what they... It is none of that. A role is nothing more than a tool to help a player as you're building out the party. So if you it gives you an idea for what that class is going to do. So if you're wanting to have a well-rounded party and with a good mix of different types of classes, the role is just something to make that easier to understand. It is no different from other editions of the game where you would say, you might hear someone saying, do we have a healer yet? Hey, what about a thief? Do we have a thief in the party? And you use that to help you decide what kinds of characters you need to round out the party. That's no different. Those are roles. A healer and a thief, those are roles that you would play. And so you're asking that same question. 4th edition simply took that and gave it some different names and kind of grouped things together so that you'd said the roles are a defender, a striker, a leader, and a controller, and they have different types of things that they would do, and the different classes fall into those different roles. It does not in any way change really what those classes or limit what those classes do any more are than any other class in any other edition of the game. It's just still a set of features that you get with each class, and those are the things you can do. So the roles, it's just simply a label that we've pretty much had in all of the editions of the game. So anyway, that's my rant on that one. The next one that is also a thing that causes some consternation amongst people that want to bash 4th edition is power sources. And let me give my 2 cents on power sources, since I just gave my 2 cents on roles. I'll do it for power sources now. So wizards get their ability to do things from their study of ancient tomes and all the scrolls and things they learn about arcane magic. And by spending their lives learning about arcane magic, they're able to then control that magic and use it to do things. Clerics spend their time worshiping a deity and getting energy from their connection with that deity and are able to use that to do things. This is really no different than anything that anybody does to train to learn how to do a thing. So while a wizard might spend all those years in school, and that allows them to control their magic and do these special things, a fighter spends their days training in more martial pursuits. They learn different ways of combat. They learn how to use different weapons, how to use different armor, all these sorts of things to become better at their craft, in the same way that the wizard did with learning their spells, in the same way that a cleric does in making their connection with their deity. It's all about training and using these things to your fullest potential. And the thing is that whenever a martial character, so a fighter, does something that they're using an ability that they've trained on for their entire lives, to an outsider that may look like magic, but it's not magic. It's just that they've been training for this, and so it looks magical. But their power source, if you will, is martial. It's a martial power source. But what that really means is that that's where they've been training, and because of that training, they've been able to unlock these abilities that other people maybe wouldn't see. So that's my thought on power sources. It's not this whole notion of they made everybody a spellcaster or anything like that. It's just, if you train your whole life to do certain things, then those things are going to allow you to do special things. And that's what these power sources are. We're simply saying that, where did you take your training? And whether you did it from an arcane library where you studied how to do it, you're praying to a deity and developing a connection with that, or you're spending your day training on how to use armor and weapons and things. So that's what the power sources translate to. As we get into the layered books, you'll see things with primal powers, and you'll see things with psionic powers. So there's other sources as well. Looking at the other ones, key abilities is a good one, because as you get into the classes, you'll see that there's lots of different powers available to them. And those powers are going to have different ability scores that you would add to your attack bonus or to your damage bonus, or if you're granting like temporary hit points or healing, there's a certain ability that you might add to those values. And so you definitely would want to know what those abilities are, so that you don't want to choose, put all your score for an ability into like charisma, and then find out that the class that you chose, all of the powers that you're going to use are, they need dexterity, and now it's like, oh crap, I didn't put my stuff in the right place. So the key abilities is just simply letting you know, for the powers for this class, the abilities that you're going to need most are going to be these two right here. Sometimes it might be 3, I think, but it's letting you know what you want to focus on, and really the order that you want to focus on them. And it's up to you if that's what you want to do. I mean, you can still make a character differently. And if you want to try to build a character that's got a little more struggle with some of that stuff, but has a more even distribution of their abilities, that's completely up to you. But it's letting you know the powers here are going to use these abilities most of all. So keep that in mind. So that's what the key abilities thing is. I'll gloss over a few of these armor weapon proficiencies. If you've played D&D before, those will make sense. It's just what have you been trained in? What weapons and armor have you been trained in? Same with implements. What implements are you trained to use? Wands, staffs, orbs, things like that. If you are trained to use them, then you get bonuses if you use them. The bonus to defense is there's 4 different types of defenses: armor class, will, fortitude, and reflex. And so different classes might give you different bonuses to those defenses, because obviously if you're a martial class, then you may have you get a bonus to your will, for example, or your fortitude, because you have the training that allows you to be tougher in those areas. Healing Surge is definitely a new 4th edition thing. So unlike in other editions of the game, where when you drink like a healing potion, you would roll a d4 or something, and you would heal that many hit points. With 4th edition, you have healing surges. Every class has a certain number of healing surges, and the value of that healing surge is different for each class depending on how you built that character. So if your healing surge value is a 7, then when you spend a healing surge, you get 7 hit points. There's no rolling any dice. You just get 7 hit points. Some powers might allow you to get some more on top of that, but that's the idea. That's what a healing surge is. We'll definitely talk more about that as we get further into this analysis. Not necessarily this video, but in future ones. Trained skills. Every edition of the game that has skills has a different way to advance in those skills. So in 3rd edition, you had skill ranks, and every time you leveled up, you'd add different rank numbers to each one, and that would advance those by a certain number. In 4th edition, you're trained. When you build your character, you have a selection of ones that you can be trained in, and that gives you a +5 bonus. And then as you level up in different skills, you get to add half your level. So it's just a different way of handling the advancement of your skills and what you can do. I'm going to kind of just skip over most of this next section about creating character, because we will circle back and we will create some characters and we will see it firsthand. So there's probably not a whole lot of need to talk about the notion of creating the character here. We will see the class features and we'll see the different powers when we actually dig into the classes themselves, and we'll get a good view of what those are. I did want to cover some of this page here, and this is the Paragon Paths and the Epic Destinies. This is definitely new to 4th edition. This is a big part of 4th edition. 4th edition is set up in 30 different levels, and which is a change from other editions of the game. But there's really 3 tiers. There's the heroic tier that goes to level 10, the Paragon tier that goes to level 20, and then the Epic tier that goes to level 30. And it's not just leveling up. You don't just go through all 30 levels and you earn a bunch of XP and then you get more powers and then lather, rinse, and repeat. Each of those different tiers does something different. So the heroic tier is really about building up your core abilities. So you're going to gain a lot of powers and things that you can do during those first 10 levels. As you level up, you get more encounter powers, more daily powers, so you get more things that you can do. By the time you get to 11th level, you're getting fewer powers. You're not going to be getting as many powers as you level up between levels 11 and 20, but you're going to choose one of these Paragon paths, and you can see that each class has several different Paragon paths available to them. You're going to choose one, and that's going to open up a whole different set of things that you can do. And these are specific to depending on which Paragon path you're going to choose. And we will dig a lot into this when we get to that point in this analysis. But just know that, so when you get to a level 11, it's not just more of the same. It is a whole different thing about you choose a Paragon path, and then it opens up a whole bunch of doors for you. Epic Destinies then take it to the next level. You get to level 21, and now you choose an Epic Destiny. Well, if you look here, you'll notice that while each class has a Paragon path to choose from, there are only in this book 4 Epic Destinies to choose from. So this is where all the classes kind of come together in what your Epic Destiny is going to be. Now your character is not just some adventurer down on the ground doing these things. Your character is a legend. Your character is becoming something more than just the world that they're in. And you can see that. I mean, you can just tell from looking Archmage and Demigod. These are big names. These mean something special. So you are on the path to godhood. I mean, that's the type of thing we're talking about at that level. When you get to level 21 and you're talking about Epic Destinies, it's pretty big. So we will spend a lot of time and we will dig into those in future videos talking about what those are. But that's a big part of 4th edition. Next, we want to talk about powers, and you can see there's 3 different type of powers. So if you this is again new to 4th edition. This is unique to 4th edition. You have at will powers, encounter powers, and daily powers. At will powers you can use as many times as you want. They never go away. You can use them. That's pretty much your bread and butter. You're going to use these for anytime you're going to do something. You're probably going to use an at will power in some form. The encounter powers are only used once per encounter, unless there's some special thing that says that you can do it more than once per encounter. So you would have to take a short rest. Encounter power. After the encounter's over, you have to take a short rest, which is only 5 minutes. And then after 5 minutes, you're able to get all your encounter powers back. And then daily powers are also, they're just once per day. You have to take an extended rest before you get your daily powers back. So an extended rest is 6 hours. So your characters would have to set up for the night and get some rest, and then you can get your daily powers back. So that's your 3 different types of powers. Obviously, the daily powers are going to be the ones that are the most powerful to give you the most bang for your buck, but you only get to use them once per day. So you got to choose carefully. And some of the magic items will have daily powers associated with them. And when we get to talking about magic items, there are some special rules about those powers as well. So, but that's your 3 types of powers that you will have. And then the next few pages here talk about how to read a power. And I'm not going to go through this too much. I want to actually look at some powers so that we can see them in action, but you can see you've got the name and the level. You've got some flavor text to help you see what it's going to look like actually on the battlefield. And then the keywords is the real meat of this, because the keywords are really what tell you what this power is going to do. And the next couple pages define a lot of those keywords for you and give you a lot of examples to show you how you might see this in practice. These couple examples here, you can see it's an at will power, an encounter power, daily power. So this is like 3 different examples. This isn't an example of one power, but so it's like an at will power that's a martial power source, and it uses a weapon. So this power is something that if you have a scimitar, you would be using your scimitar with this power. And so that's your attack that you would be with your scimitar. And this is a power that you would use. This is like an encounter power, and it just says it's divine. This is a daily power. This one also tells you what kind of damage it's going to do. So it's going to do acid damage. It's an arcane power source, and it uses an implement. So that would be like a wand or a staff or an orb. So if you have a wand or a staff or an orb, that's what you would use when you're using this particular power. So we've got our power sources, the different types of damage, the different effect types that you might have. And you can see this whole the rest of it talking about different examples of the different types of things. These are all different keywords that you would see within the powers to help you understand how that power works. If there's a trigger, is it a melee? Is it ranged? Does it do a close burst or an area burst or a wall? If there's prerequisites, so like this one, you must be wielding a light blade. What kind of targets it has. It's just one creature. Sometimes it might say self or personal. Sometimes it's, each enemy in the burst or so that means it won't affect your allies. If it's the burst and there's enemies and allies in that burst, then it's only going to affect the enemies. But if it just says each creature in the burst, then it's going to be everybody, and you're going to be dealing damage to everybody in those cases. The attacks, so which ability are you going to use for your attack, and what defense is it going against? If you get a little extra bonus on top of your core ability, it would tell you that. And then it's going to tell you what to do with hit. Now, this is a point that maybe is a little confusing. I know it was for me when I was first starting, is this W. You get this in W in the brackets here. And that is your weapon damage. So if you've got a weapon that deals 1d6 damage, and you've got a power that says it does 1W plus strength, then it's going to be 1d6 plus the strength modifier is your damage. And then if you have another one that says 2W, it would be 2d6 because it's 2 of those weapon damage die, which would be 2d6. Now, the confusing part is, people get confused because what if my weapon does 2d6 damage? It's, so I have a weapon that does 2d6 damage and it says 1W. It's like, okay, I roll my 2d6 damage. But then when I do 2W, well, that's going to be 4d6 damage because you're multiplying the weapon damage, which is 2d6. So you get 2 of those, that's 4d6, and on up the line. So just remember, anywhere you see in a power that it says W, that's where you just look up what the weapon damage is, and you would just do whatever multiple of that based on that description. So, So that is the kind of the introduction to the class stuff. This is the things we need to know as we're looking through classes. But I want to take a second and let's actually look at some of these classes or some of these powers and for real, and so we can interpret them before we wrap this one up. And then in future videos, we'll actually look at the classes themselves. So let me flip over here and see if that comes up. Well, it does. Okay, cool. So this one, I just have a few examples I pulled just to talk through them. So this one is Healing Word. This is a cleric feature. So this is not a power that you choose as you level up when you're choosing powers. This is actually just part of being a cleric. You get this power right out of the box. And then you've got your flavor text. You whisper a brief prayer as divine light washes over your target, helping to mend its wounds. So just a little idea of what this might look like on the battlefield. And you can use that and expand on it however you want as you're describing it. You can see the keyword has encounter, and then in parentheses it says special. So it's like, okay, so that's a little different, but right underneath it, you see it says special, and it says you can use this power twice per encounter, but only once per round. So there you go. So it's an encounter power, which normally is just once per encounter, but that special indicates there's a definition here that says you can actually use it twice per encounter, but you are limited. You couldn't use it twice in the same round. So you couldn't use this 2 times in a row to heal 2 of your allies in the same round. You'd have to wait till the next round to do the next one. The next 2 keywords we've got are divine and healing. So this is a divine power source for this, and the keyword is just indicating that it is healing. That comes into play sometimes when you have other things that are going on where it might indicate that if you're using a power that is healing, then you get to do something else with it. You get to add additional bonuses to it. So that's where that keyword comes in. You'll see other keywords in the same way where it's really, these are just indicators that may come into play when you're doing other things. So this is a healing power essentially. The next thing further down is then it's a minor action. So you can do Healing Word, and then you still have your standard action available to you to do something else. A Close Burst 5. So I had described a Close Burst. I think I described a Close Blast in a prior video. But this one is a burst. We'll talk more about some of those things a little bit later, and I'll do some demos of those when we're talking through the classes. But that's a whole area of effect. And so it's essentially anyone in that area is going to be able to take the effects of this. And you can see at 11th level, it goes up to 10, burst 10. And then at 21st level, it goes up to a burst 15. So you start getting more and more ability to do that healing. The target is going to be you or one ally. So it's anybody in that burst. So it's not everybody in that burst. It's just going to be you or an ally in that burst. But so you can kind of target a larger area. And then a target can spend a healing surge and regain an additional 1d6 hit points. So we talked about healing surges. So each character will have a healing surge value. You spend a healing surge and you get whatever that value is back. And now because of this Healing Word, they can also roll a 1d6 and get that many hit points on top of that back. And then at higher levels, you get more and more healing available to them because obviously there's higher and higher damage amounts. So that'll come into play later. But so that's Healing Word. And just to kind of take a look at some of the other ones here. Cleave, this is a fighter attack power. So this is an at-will power that you might choose as a first level fighter. You got your flavor text. Cleave is a pretty traditional power that you would use as a fighter where you attack an enemy and then your momentum just kind of carries you into another enemy that's adjacent. It says it's an at-will. It's a martial power, uses a weapon. So whatever your normal weapon is that you would have, uses a standard action. And again, it mentions the melee attack. So this is not something you would use. You can't use a bow and arrow to do this or a crossbow. This is a melee weapon. So you're talking about a sword or a warhammer or something like that. Targets one creature. And so your attack is going to be strength versus armor class. So whatever your attack is with that weapon, it's going to be strength based and it's going to be against the armor class. If you hit, then you're going to do 1 of the weapon damage. So like say it's like 1d6 plus your strength modifier to damage that is the damage for that attack that you succeeded on. And then an enemy adjacent to you takes damage equal to your strength modifier. So you attacked an enemy and you dealt damage to that enemy, and then another enemy that's adjacent to you takes damage equal to whatever your strength modifier is. So if your strength modifier is a 3, then they would take 3 points of damage. So that's what cleave does. It basically, you're attacking one monster and then you can deal some damage to another one. Looking at another power, Sly Flourish. This one was a rogue attack. You can see a lot of these same keywords. Notice that this one says melee or ranged weapon. So now you have an option. It's not just one or the other. You can use a bow and arrow if that's what you have, or you can use a dagger if you want, or a short sword. Sorry, it actually says requirement. You must be wielding a crossbow, a light blade, or a sling. So sorry, it says melee or ranged, but then it has a requirement that limits that. So it has to be a crossbow or a light blade, which could still be, I believe, a short sword or a dagger, or a sling. So you couldn't have a long sword and a longbow and use this. So you are limited by the requirement right there. Targets one creature. This one uses dexterity versus armor class. So whatever your attack is, using dexterity with that weapon. And then you on a hit, you would do one of those weapon die damage plus your dexterity modifier plus your charisma modifier. So this one's giving you a little extra damage on top of what you don't normally get if you just did a basic attack with that weapon. But you can see the idea here as I'm going through these is that you can see how it's really spelling out every detail. I don't need to really reference anything. I might have to go back to the to this page here to try to find what specifically some of these keywords mean, but it's all contained within this one section. And generally though, just looking at the power, you kind of get an idea for what it's going to do. The last one I had, just because I wanted to get a spell in there from a wizard, this was Ray of Frost from a wizard, same type of thing. This one mentions an implement. So this would be the wand or the staff, and then it's a ranged 10. So you're going to choose a target that could be up to 10 squares away. Notice the attack for this one is intelligence versus fortitude. So that's a little different from what we've seen in some of the other ones, which have been armor class. This one is attacking the fortitude. And because this is not a weapon that you're using, so a weapon has a damage die associated with it. So you'd have a 1d6, 1d8, 1d10, whatever it is that's associated with the weapon. And so it would say like 1W, but your implement doesn't have a weapon die to it. So the power itself will tell you what the damage is going to be. In this case, it's a 1d6 plus your intelligence modifier, and it's cold damage, and the target is slowed until the end of your next turn. So all those details are right there. So, but that's why this one actually has a damage die listed, is because you're using an implement, not a weapon, and that implement is not going to have a damage die associated with it. So that's just some examples of the powers that are out there and how all these keywords come into play. As we start digging into the classes and we will look at some of the powers in more detail, you'll see even more examples of how they all work. There's so much detail with all of the classes. I'm not sure how far I will take each class review because those videos could get very long. So I'll probably just start with some of the overviews of the core stuff and maybe look at some of the first level things available. And then we'll do more videos later on where we dig into the higher levels and certainly talk about Paragon tiers and the Epic Destinies and things like that. So, but that's our starting point for the classes. This is, this is really just about 4 pages from the beginning of the classes chapter in this player's handbook. But you can see it's a lot of good stuff that is definitely starting to get into unique for 4th edition that we want to understand before we get into the classes themselves, because we're going to want to know these things in order to make the right choices and understand those power cards and how you use them and where they might be beneficial and which ones you would prefer to use. So that's the idea here with this one. So very shortly we will start looking at those classes and see what each of them can do and some of the interesting things that are out there. But let me know your thoughts. Anything that I overlooked here, that I misrepresented, anything that I should cover in the future to make sure that we cover all the bases with this, let me know down in the comments. I'd definitely love to see your thoughts and just kind of steer the direction that these are going in as we move forward. So look forward to reading those. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out the newsletter if you are interested in that as well. Until next time, take care.